I believe the uptake has been fairly good. We'd always like it to be better, and we're always working to improve accessibility and availability of vaccination. The main barrier to people getting vaccinated is having difficulty actually getting to the appointment to have it, to get it. We may be starting to see a drop in cancer cases. We have definitely seen a drop in the pre-cancer cases that we saw. What used to happen was you'd go in for a cervical screen, cervical smear test, they'd see changes, and usually they were picking up precancerous changes, and you'd generally have to go in and have a colposcopy test, which means going up in the stirrups with a speculum and somebody shining a light on your cervix and dabbing it with something to show up any abnormal cells and maybe zapping those cells with a laser and things. It was all quite an involved, not very pleasant procedure and quite frightening, even though this was precancerous and not cancerous. And the idea was to treat the precancerous changes so they never went on to cause cancer. But in themselves, that treatment was quite distressing and expensive. And the vaccination was expected to have an even bigger effect on reducing precancerous changes than actually on reducing cancer. And we've seen that in practice. So many fewer women are having to go through that unpleasant procedure of having their colposcopies and their cervixes zapped with lasers and things. It takes time, about 10 years, I think, from the infection and to go on to becoming cancer. So we wouldn't expect to see a fall off in cancer until 10 years or longer after we started the vaccination program. And well, my daughter had her vaccine back in 2007. I can't remember when it was now, sorry, I wrote it down. In 2007. So we now must be about 14 or 15 years in. So we would be beginning to start to see a drop in cancer cases, but 10 years is a minimum and it's often longer. So we'd be beginning to see the drop off in cancer cases around now. We might not have seen a very big change as yet. Of course, the longer it is since you started having sex, the more likely it is that you will already have acquired the viruses. And we had hopes that the vaccine would be therapeutic. It would teach your immune system to recognize the virus, and that would then clear it. Sadly, that may happen to some extent, but not as much as we hoped. So once you've already been infected, the vaccine is unlikely to be particularly useful. Having said which, you may not have been infected with all 4 of the vaccine preventable strains, so it may still have some value. And I believe that the current program allows for women up to the age of 25, or indeed people of both sexes now up to the age of 25, I think it is. You have to check to be certain, but I think it's up to 25 you can still get the vaccine on the NHS. I think it all comes down to cost efficacy, and the feeling was that the calculation was that most women would already have been infected. And if you've already been infected, the vaccine isn't going to help. I remember being invited to an event once where they were talking about introducing HPV vaccine in Morocco. And they had a princess from the Moroccan royal family spearheading this campaign to get women vaccinated to prevent cervical cancer in Morocco, where of course it's a problem just as it is anywhere in the world. So that was an interesting event. Cervical cancer screening is quite difficult to do. You have to have a good call and recall system. It's much, much easier to vaccinate all girls to prevent cervical cancer than it is to screen them for the rest of their lives. So if you have to choose to do one or the other because you don't have the resources to do both, vaccination is the cheaper option and almost as good.